Oh, and
Okay, Maria.
thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's absolutely brilliant to see you here today in the honor of story and our red threading. So, we're looking at the red thread of story today. So, we have a few little rules. First of all, we're recording this for the Grow Through What You Go Through series that is on YouTube, and we will be sending you all the link afterwards. If you wish not to be on camera, then you can turn your camera off and your face won't appear on the recording. There will be a chance to participate as we go throughout the day. In that case, I might ask you if it was okay for me to bring your face up on screen. It's completely up to you whether you wish to do that or not. So those are the rules. Out to the left, we have the bathroom. If there's a fire, follow me because I'll be first out the door. Only joking. Hopefully, there won't be anything like that. So, in the background, we have Mandy Dyson. Mandy will be putting everybody on mute until we come to the parts of the workshop where we will need participation. And Mandy, I warn you, there's going to be a lot of those. So, let's begin. Okay, so we're going to use our chat session section a lot. So I'll be looking down here a lot at what happens in our chat. Where is my chat? Right, there it is. So the first thing in our chat would be, it would be great if you could put in your name and where you're from. So we have a little roll call. I'm Maria and I'm from Cork in Ireland. Cork is famous for the Blarney Stone. And if you kiss the Blarney Stone, they say you get the gift of the gab. People in Cork Yarn Spinners and my mother as well say that I took a bite out of the Blarney Stone. And I'm saying nothing. I'm not going to say whether that's true or whether that's not true. So if you could put your name into the chat, it would be brilliant. So now our first question of the day in terms of red thread of story. It's a mechanism that I would have explored as a drama therapist when I was in Maynooth. And it's a way of looking at story as a connecting force. It connects us into the future. It connects us back into the past. It connects us now in the present from one to the other. That's one way of looking at the threading. But if you look at my amulet, so I'll just take it off there and show you my amulet. So if you look at my amulet, it's the Labradorite stone, and the words on it say Scéalta lice in the Irish script. So that means healing stories. And I'm very interested in the Celtic traditions, particularly the Irish Celtic traditions of putting healing and wisdom into stories and how that can happen. And the stone in my amulet is Labradorite, which is for nuance of communication, for reading between the lines. We know from business practices that 20% of what is communicated is through the voice, and 80% of what is picked up is from what we intuit, how something is said. Not just what is said, but how something is said. And when it comes to poetry and music, the rhythm of the words is even more spotlighted and is even more honored in that. So that's all part of the red threading. So welcome to all of the people that are coming in and have come in to our session. And a part of my developing practice in red threading is the wise question. Ask the question, and you might get some surprising answers, or you might get an answer that underlines what you thought was going to happen. And I wonder what will happen today when we come into that. And oh, I see that our roll call is coming in. We have Nuala from Enniskillen. We have Ray from West Cork, Jody in Maryland in the US, another person from the US. Welcome, welcome. I know you've gotten up early to come. Janet from Staffordshire, Alan Hall, Emer Burke from Kilkenny. Emer is another one of my peer storytellers. I do an awful lot of work with Emer. I often go to Kilkenny for her stories. She often comes to Cork to me. We're both in MFR, the Mad for Road peer group. So it's lovely to see you. We've Marguerite from Bandon, and she's very involved with the Bridget Rising Energy this year and has discovered a well in Bandon, which is amazing. And we have hello from Marcella, Cork versus Kilkenny, love it. Sandra, loads more. I'm just going to carry on with our red threading there now, but it's lovely to see all of the people that are coming in. And here's my first wise question of the day. Please feel free to use the chat to answer it. So when you think of story as a way to make us feel better, what does that mean for you? So when it's a story that's a vehicle to make us feel better, what does that mean for you? So we'll have 2 seconds to have a think. Say the first thing that comes into your mind, because that's often our gut reaction. And I'd like to listen to our gut today. Hope and transformation, excellent. And hello to Vi and Kat as well. So hope and transformation from Vicky, brilliant. Amusement and relaxation from Jody. A way of improving your mind. Your grandmother group details, humor, calming, reassuring, bring us morals, deep thoughts and smiles. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you. Keep them coming. A ray of sunshine for the soul from our Ray. Something relatable, letting people know they are not alone. A connecting force. Lessons, absolutely. Thank you for all of your gorgeous contributions, and keep them coming through the morning. So when I studied the red thread of story, catharsis came up 2,000 years ago, more than that now, almost another century you could add on to that now. There was no societies, and people were beginning to build their first societies. And in the cradle of humanity in Greece, they thought, how can we put across our thinking? How can we do it? There was no computers, there was no telephones, there was no televisions. How were they going to do it? So the leaders thought about it, and they said, if we make stories and if we make them bigger than normal, so if we cut out these massive wooden heads that are like, the size of a person, and we get people to parade through the streets saying, if you are good, this will happen. Ah, and the Greek chorus was born. And if you're bad, you'll go to Hades. Ah, and lion taming was born. But in doing that, they were using stories to create the first societies as we know them today. There would have been, of course, the older tribal societies, but the societies that were beginning to build that we know today, the basis of those was story, so and catharsis was the idea that you could have had a really shocking day, so imagine you're building a society for the first time in Greece and nobody is getting what you're saying. And then you go to a play, or you read a book, or you tell stories around the fire. And in fact, nothing has changed. But in reality, everything has changed. You feel better, you feel lighter. And why? Why is it that you have felt these things? And that is the conundrum of catharsis. And storytelling is a cathartic vehicle. So often catharsis is one of the energies that we work through in drama therapy and in storytelling. So I'm hoping that that's making sense and kind of in catharsis, what are the energies that we're talking about? Well, we're talking about all of the things that you have in the messages here: peace, calmness, happiness, lessons, being relatable, letting people know that they're not alone, deep thoughts, rays of sunshine, uh, reassurance, morals. All of those things can come through the vehicle of catharsis. And stories can say it in a way that is safe. So instead of, a situation where you were saying, you should have done this or you need to do that, the waggy finger kind of thinking that we often have in schools and in the corporate environment. Instead of that, you'd say, once upon a time, there was this king who was, and you can see the good and the bad play out in that. So does that make sense? Great. I'm seeing all the nodding heads there. That's mighty. I'd love to have you in a room, because if I had you in a room now, we'd get up and we'd use our bodies as well. So for right now, I just want to touch very lightly on the tools of storytelling. So the instrument of storytelling, of course, is the voice of the person, and how we use that voice: pitch, pace, pause, whispering. Whispering is like the magic mist. So we often, in Celtic stories, we often talk about the magic mist, Ciodriachta. I think it sounds way more magic in the Irish language. Ciodriachta, the magic mist. And sometimes when we're whispering, it brings us into a space between the veils. So it can be used to denote magic, a magic moment. And there before her appeared. Or it can be used as a mechanism of putting across a scary story. Her heart nearly stopped. And in both of those examples, I'm also showing you how pace is important. So the pace of a storyteller, I got a great tip from Toastmasters way back in my early days. And they said, if you're looking out across an audience and you're trying to reach the person at the back, your gestures get bigger and your voice has to travel a longer way. So you slow it down. And I thought that I'm so visual. That is something that sat with me. So those are a little bit about the tools that we use to put a story across. But eye contact is also very important. And when COVID hit and we were sitting in this little square box that we're sitting in now, we had to relearn our craft, because in the early days we were all way up against the camera, or we were completely afraid of it and we were off to the side, and over time you learn that this is the space that I'm operating in. But when you're telling stories in the rambling house way, where you're all sitting around in a circle, often around a fire, so it would be a semicircle, then you use the space a lot differently, because you can completely expand your gestures, which is more difficult to do when you're being conscious of your little screen space. So that's a little bit about the tools of storytelling, and I'm touching on those very lightly. And now we come to the red thread of story. So when you're telling a story, let me know in the chat, what you're seeing when you're telling the story. Or how do you tell the story? Do you see the words in your mind? Do you see a scene in your mind? Do you see anything? Are you just focusing on your audience? So if you can let me know in the chat, that would be very useful to me. And as you're is it something you've ever thought about? When I'm telling a story, where am I in that? Am I completely disappeared? Am I the microphone for the story? Do I become a projector? What is it that happens? I can see the story. I see the scenes in my mind. Me too. I think, yeah, me too. So, and as I've honed that skill of seeing the stories in my mind, sometimes it becomes very real. I had an experience where I could see a fox weaving in and out of the chairs behind the person that I was telling the story to. And 2 or 3 nights later, when I met Anne Ryn for the first time at the Court MacSherry Storytelling Festival, I was driving home just after that experience when this story was new, and a fox jumped up on the bonnet of my car and looked in through the window at me. And I thought, oh my God, there's magic in this. There's pure magic in stories. Beautiful, beautiful answers coming up here. So I'm just going to go up a bit. The answers start moving as they come in. So I'm just going back there a little bit to find some. Yeah, so seeing the scene, the images are screenshots almost from the main events. Yes, yes, an overview. Seeing the scene in my mind. I see the world of the story playing, but I also see the audience response and myself between them. Absolutely. So that's from Vicky, very accomplished storyteller. I disappear. Me too, sometimes. Yeah. If it's a Banfassa story for me, sometimes I can disappear and not remember the storytelling afterwards. David says he sees a series of images in the story, almost like a movie screen. And we've discussed that before, myself and David, and I have felt that as well. So I suppose the thing is, you can feel all of them, but being conscious of them makes them tools. You can hone them then, you know. I picture the scene, I feel the emotion, I feel the warmth of someone. If it's somebody who has passed, absolutely feeling the connection to the person who's told you the story and the connection to the story itself. I see the shape of the travel where the story is going, and sometimes in colour. I see me in the scene, but I also listen for guidance, the wind, etc. That comes from Ray. Myself and Ray have often discussed the Celtic tradition of sitting in nature, like John O'Donoghue did, and seeing what the stones will tell you. And it's such a different pace from the life that we normally lead, and seeing the events and stories, absolutely. So we've got beautiful examples there of kind of how a story presents itself for you before you tell it or as you're telling it. So you're aware of the emotion in the story, and that you can almost use it like a visual map. Look at all of the wisdom that we have in the people that are attending here today. How I'd love to have you in the room and be able to look in your faces now, you know. But how magnificent is it that we can meet in all different parts of the world right now with these 21 people and be able to share this kind of wisdom amongst ourselves. So, in the first thread of the weaving of the story, we look at how the story has come to us. And so we're looking inwards. My old granny, who was a great storyteller herself, her name was Ellen Conroy, then Ellen Cahalan. She said that storytelling was like a beautiful carpet. And she said, here on earth, we're underneath the carpet and we see it from behind, and it still looks beautiful. And all the threads are messy and the knots are there. But she said, if you can see it from heaven, you see an absolutely beautiful picture altogether. So I was very interested in that notion, the notion of how we see stories, and we've just looked at how we can see stories together and what you can get from that, and the nourishments that it gives us. And even in the creating of a story, we come in contact with the catharsis that we've spoken about already. But now, if we look outwards, where does the thread go? And how can we hone some of the ways that we see the scene or the characters of the story that we're looking at. So that's the question. That's the next wise question to you. How do we hone or spotlight in the story the different, kind of the different qualities of the story? So if you could put into the chat how you do it first, and then I'll give you some tips that I've picked up. So how do you hone a character? How do you hone a scene? Oh, I've just seen Sandra's chat. I get drawn into history and events that have passed. I research them, and then I try to tell the story through poetry. And I have been the willing audience of some of Sandra's poetry, and she does a great job on that. Oh, beautiful, Marguerite, you imagine yourself in the space. Yeah, that's gorgeous. I put myself into that character and I live them. Yes, Karen Edwards, me too. So Karen is a beautiful storyteller from Northern Ireland and a very accomplished musician. I love how she weaves storytelling and music together, embodying the character, going back to using the voice, the pace, the pause, etc., empathizing with the characters and the place. Absolutely. Those are all beautiful mechanisms, and they're ones that come to us so easily and so naturally. Sometimes it's good to sit with a character, and what do I mean by that? So sometimes before a story forms, it's nice to go into the mist. Let's go into the mist again. I love that magic mist where everything is soft, the liminal place where anything is possible. So if we walk into the mist and we can't see the story yet because there's a soft white mist hovering, but a character makes themselves known. So sometimes this is how I work. A character is beginning to make themselves known, and I want to know everything there is about this character. So this is a deep dive. So we take a breath. And we allow the character to come into our mind's eye. And then we freeze that character because we can, because it's in our internal world, and because we're in complete control in the internal world. And as we walk up to that character inside in our mind's eye, looking at the character will begin to give us hints about this character. How old are they? What are they wearing? What have they on their feet? How are they feeling today? How do we know by looking at them? Look at all the wise questions I'm asking myself. What colour are their eyes, the window of the soul? What are the eyes telling me today? Then I step away from the character and I sit on a stone under a tree in my internal world. And I think, what are the qualities of this character? If this character walked into a room, what would people know about them immediately just by looking at them? Their strength or their kindness, their cruelty, their hardness. What would they know and how would they know it? And so the character of the person that I'm looking at is beginning to build. I know what they look like. I'm now beginning to get some characteristics of this character. And then I think to myself, if they had to lead me, if they had to lead a group like this 21 people, these people here, what would be their style of leadership? What would be their style of following? Would loyalty be part of that? And so we're taking a deep dive. And I notice myself as we begin to take a deep dive into the character, my own pace is slowing. Are you noticing that? The pace slows as we go into our internal world. And oftentimes you can tell when you've worked with people for a long time, when I work with my peer group, when they're engaging in work like this, when they're looking at you and they're seeing the character in between you and that person, something happens in their eyes. I'm not sure if you can see it in the screen, but it's something like this. And then I'm looking at you and it's like this. So that's a little bit where the mist comes in between you. And that mist, remember, is magic. In that mist, anything is possible. I can invite you in through the mist. You can decide to come in or not, depending on where you are in that day. So, does that make sense? Yeah, very good. So now, if we were all together in a room, or if I could make the breakout rooms, but unfortunately, our little Zoom platform here won't let me. Now I'd break you into little groups. So the plan was to make 6 groups. So we may have to come back together to do that another time. And you would discuss a character and you would come up with a character. So just for this moment in time, I'm going to warn you that I'm going into gallery view where I will see all of the faces. And I'm going to ask somebody to work with me in this way. So just let me go into gallery view first. If you don't want to be recorded, now is the time to turn your camera off. Hello, lovely people. So, is there somebody that would like to help me demonstrate how we can bring a character together between two of us to take a deep dive with me? If yes, because I'm looking at it visually, can you put your hand up in the picture?
I'll go.
Oh, who's that? Is that Karen?
It is.
Brilliant. Lovely. You're first in, Karen. So I'm just going to go back to speaker view and I'm going to Karen Edwards.
I did unmute there, in case I need
Brilliant.
to say yes.
That's fantastic.
I hope I can now.
I'm delighted that you unmuted. So I'm just going to, now the two of us are on my screen together, myself and Karen Edwards. So Karen is an absolutely amazing storyteller and a story maker and has a lot of experience. But I have done this with people who've had no experience as well, and we've got amazing results. An example is one of my most requested stories is Grumpy Gobs. And I made that story with a group of 3-year-olds who are now 10-year-olds. So this mechanism works across all generations, all cultures. I love it. And it's a mechanism that storytellers have been using ever since language was invented. So here we go. So Karen, I'm going to say to you that we're going to co-create now with the character that's walked into your head, which means you're going to have to deliver up your beautiful character to this group, and this group is just 2 of us. So if we were in a room, it would be more than 2 of us. But right now, just for demonstration, it's just the 2 of us. So are you willing to hold the 2 characters, the character that has now been born in your imagination and the one that we're going to make together?
Yep.
Very good. Right answer. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is name your character.
My character is called Kate.
Kate. I love it.
Yep.
Okay. How old is Kate?
Kate is roughly 35, 36.
35 or 36. How do you know by looking at Kate?
How do I know what age she is? Or
Yeah, by looking, just because we've frozen her in your mind's eye. And
it's not so much by looking at her, it's more by the fact that she has a lot of responsibility and it looks after her younger siblings. But yeah, I mean, her hair is still its natural color.
Yeah.
So she hasn't started to lose the color. She doesn't really have, her face isn't lined or anything like that. It's still quite fresh, just like your own. Um, so yeah, and she's fairly slim. She's not, she's not hefty or whatever.
Yeah.
She's quite slight on her feet.
Okay, brilliant. Okay. Now, if you were to tell me how she's feeling today, how is she feeling today?
She's feeling anxious and nervous, as well as having the burden of responsibility.
Okay.
But she's anxious about an event
Okay.
that's going to happen.
Okay, so this is where I stop you now, and this is where she becomes a different character.
Okay.
Oftentimes in stories, the story just goes, and we receive the whole thing because we've become fast food eaters and fast food workers, you know. So now that we're making this story between ourselves, I'm going to say to you, we don't know why she's anxious, just that she is anxious.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's good
Okay.
to know how she's feeling, but not the reason why. So she's feeling anxious and what
Hmm.
else?
Nervous.
And nervous.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason for that may change because that could be another part of the story. In fact, I'm going to say it will change, and it
Hmm.
won't be you or I that will decide what has made her anxious and nervous today. So we know a lot about her at the moment, about her physically and how she's feeling, you know. And then I'm going to say to you, if she had three strengths, so I want the qualities to be strengths for some reason. Sometimes it's not strengths, but today it is. What would be her strengths?
Her strengths, firstly, she is very reliable.
Mhm.
You can really depend on Kate.
Yeah,
Um, she is she's adventurous. She's
yeah,
not afraid of, you know, doing something that involves a risk.
yeah,
She likes to not live life dangerously, but she's not, somebody who won't take a risk or won't try something new.
yeah,
And her third strength is that she is a strong woman in the face of poverty.
yeah.
She doesn't let that grind her down in any way.
Now there's the words of a storyteller. She's a strong woman in the face of poverty, instead of saying she was poor. I love it. Oh, okay. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to release you back into the wild there now. So I'm going to unpin you from here for a moment. So there we go. So, and then to everybody else, isn't it amazing to see how, kind of we start to build her in our heads? Did you begin to see her? Did you begin to see Kate in your mind's eye? And that is the canvas of a storyteller. So, and we're now looking at the paints that we use to build a story. So I often say that that words are my paintbrush for putting a picture in your head. And I have to say, Karen put a very strong picture of this 35-year-old Kate in my head. If I had to encapsulate it in one word, I would say survivor. If you had to encapsulate it in one word, what would you say about this woman? Who does she remind you of in your life? Is there a woman like Kate who have faced poverty, who is reliable, who is adventurous despite everything? Is there someone like that in your life? Maybe it's not a woman, maybe it's a man. And so we begin to connect across the threads. This thread is called Kate. Interesting. Also, what did it feel like to you when I said you might have to share Kate now? To everybody, not just to Karen. How did it feel when I said that mightn't be what made her anxious or nervous? And we didn't even hear it because we're co creating a story. you know. Oh, lovely to hear. She reminds me of a younger version of myself. Lovely, Mandy. Grumpy Comes. Yeah, it's definitely a story that people love, you know. I love the use of the mists as well for journeying in and out of worlds. It's like it makes a doorway that you can access and you can see it very easily. You can see mist in your mind very easily and you can walk through it easily, you know. So beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so now we've looked at how we might form a character and asking ourselves those wise questions and sitting with the answers and noticing how the subtle changes, you know, how a character might change. And there are times, even for myself, in this time, where a story will come fully formed to me, you know, and I will not change one word of those stories. And then sometimes a story can be carved, like the story we're carving together. And with those stories, I feel the permission to change when we need to change. And that brings me to an important question, you know. There was a debate in on local radio in recent times that said, "Oh, Cinderella and you know the um, other female ones like that." So you would be Snow White, Cinderella, all of those archetypal stories. They said we need to kill those stories. They're not good for our young people. And as a storyteller, I went, no way, you know. So if you're not going to kill the stories, but you're going to make the stories relevant to the young women and our young girls of today, how would you do it? Because stories are shapeshifters. Shape-shifting comes from the world of stories. So how would you do it? Yes, reshape, Vicky. Absolutely. Just going into the chat here and it's not cooperating. Oh, I love this one. It is in the mists that you can lose the ego of the storyteller because things may not happen that you have already decided. Love it. So you let yourself open to the world of story and you're a commentator on the world of story instead of being the one that has to make the changes. I love that. Very nice. Yeah. Yes, Vicky, examine and throw out what is no longer useful or relevant and bring in what we need. Use empowerment, absolutely. Try to make the stories relevant to a contemporary context, which we've always done. So the grim stories were Disneyfied in the around the 50s, around that time, but they're actually a lot more grim and they were stories to teach horrible truths without you having to go through the experience of the horrible truth, you know. So absolutely change them back. Adapting the story to the situation, absolutely. Reframe the story to make it correct. Yeah. Sandra, I might make it politically correct, but try to use other words to keep the authenticity of the story. Absolutely. So that's like honoring where the story came from, you know, and also a nod to it. It was relevant then and could be relevant now, you know, if we did this with the story. So it's kind of using where we came from to shape where we're going to. So I really like that. Thank you, Sandra. Another way is to sit with a group of 21 people like this and ask the wise question, how do we change that story? How do we change Cinderella? Do we make Cinderella the one that charges in on the white horse, for example? You know, and so you could play with that, maybe embody the characters, see what Cinderella was really thinking. That's almost like a gestalt method of inhabiting the characters That's what we would say in college. My grandmother would say, let's have a play, girl. Let's have a play with the characters. And I love that too. So it's like bridging a gap across time. Yes, it is, Alma. Yes, it is. I love it. Um, my Mad for Road peer group are love the idea of no borders time wise, backwards, forwards, or to the side. You can be in any time that you feel like being in. And also that we don't like to have borders between our countries. So a lot of us are, you know, kind of tellers from the UK, Ireland, one from Wales. We're hoping for a few from Scotland, you know. So, you know, so there might be borders in our political scape, but there's no borders between us, you know, and myself and Mandy were having a chat about that before we came online today. And is storytelling a way of bridging between borders, rubbing them out maybe for a certain space of time, a little like that cathartic effect? We have to live in that world with borders, but in here in this bubble for this amount of time, we don't have to have borders. So love it. um I love it. Karen is in Glasgow at the minute. Yes, that definitely helps. um Bridging across time. I think I was saying that as you were typing it. I love it. Um, yeah, gorgeous. I'm loving. I'm going to keep this lovely chat that we have. My wise questions are not going into it, but we'll remember them, you know. But I'm loving the answers that are coming up. And we might keep this chat, Mandy, if you don't mind. And if anybody wants a copy of the chat, you can save it at the end or let us know and we'll send you a copy of this chat, because your contribution to this exploration of the red thread of story is very important. You know, we're not getting a huge amount of time to play together, so it's really good to have the answers to these questions. Oh, I love this from Janet. If a character behaves in an unacceptable way in a story, that could be a beautiful chance to explore why, you know, and then why is it happening in the real world, you know? So, oh yes, definitely. There was from David in Texas. You know, borders not just between countries, but the original Cinderella has moved around. Absolutely. She was in ancient Egypt, and it's a wonderful use of a story when teaching history. And recently, we found out through Colin Irwin, my story brother, that there was a Cinderella in Antrim, on one of the islands in Antrim, and his book is out, and I was very interested in that idea of a Cinderella character. And we're talking going back over 200 years ago, when there was no television, telephones, mechanisms. The only mechanism of getting a story from one country to another were the people who came and told those stories. So I'm going to come up out of the chat for a moment, and I'm going to go to another red thread that we might throw out. So we might throw out the character, and we might find out, you know, a little bit about the character, and then we shelve the character and we walk out of that mist in our mind's eye and we walk into a different coloured mist. It might have a tinge of yellow this time. And when we walk through on the other side, we come to a place. And here's the wise questions about the place. Has anyone ever been here before? And if they were here, did they leave a sign here about themselves? When you listen, who or what can you hear in this place? What do you feel if you walk barefoot in this place? What can you feel under your feet? What smells are here? Do they make you want to hold your nose? Or do they make you want to breathe deeper? Are there sounds of nature here? Or is nature far, far away from this place? Name the place. It can't be a name of a place that already exists. So if what you saw in your mind's eye is a place that has existed or does exist, you have to change the name. And I'm going to warn you again that I'm going to go into the gallery effect because I'm going to look for participation in unpacking that. So I'm just going into gallery for one moment. Hello, everybody. Lovely to see you. So if we can get somebody maybe who hasn't contributed before to stand beside me and unpack this one. So who would like to come in? Maybe if you could use your hand so I can see you and invite you in. And maybe nobody is Sandra. I don't know if you're waving or you're not. Marguerite. Yes, brilliant. I'm going to bring Marguerite in. So the first thing I do is I go back to speaker view and I look for Marguerite. There you are. How are you, Marguerite?
How you doing? Hiya.
Oh, lovely to see you. And I'm so interested that you came in on place, given the fact that we met on St. Bridget's Day in a beautiful place and we sang at her well, an ancient Bridget's well. So it's amazing that you're the person that comes in now.
And I'm still there.
Oh, very good, very good. So what we're going to do with this is I'm going to say to you, is it going to be okay for me to take and transmogrify your place and you can hold your original place, but you're going to donate this one to the story?
Okay.
Yes, okay, brilliant. And then I'm going to ask you to name your place.
I just wrote it down there. Elvery.
Elvery, love it. Okay, now tell me all about this place. What's the temperature like, and is it indoors or outdoors?
It's the temperature is exactly right. It's outdoors,
Yeah.
and I've just emerged from mud, and the first thing I can see is the light coming through the water above the mud, and then as I step out of the mud, I can hear a gurgle of a stream, and the place is shaded by a tree, and all is silent apart from the sounds of nature.
Tell me about the sounds of nature.
There's the gurgle,
Yeah,
there's the swish of the trees, the leaves of the trees.
yeah.
There's the bird song. You might sheep buying maybe somewhere in the distance. No other sounds, no man-made sounds whatsoever.
Fabulous. Okay. And then what can you smell here?
I can smell the damp mud. I can smell the undergrowth. That lovely kind of tart smell of brambles growing, which you remember as a child when you were near the ground.
Yeah. Beautiful.
What else can you smell?
Lovely. That's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to take that place now and we're going to land Kate in that place. And that's going to be our next red thread of story. So for now, thank you so much for Elvery, Marguerite. Love it. And I'm going to let you go. And I'm going to ask my group here, I'm going to say to you, what was it like hearing Marguerite build that place? Could you see it in your mind's eye? Was there parts where you went, oh, I'd like to add this, or I'd like to take this away? You know, did you have like a visceral connection to this place? Was it like your own place? What were the similarities between the place that you were making in your mind's eye and what Marguerite told us? That is also the red thread of story. Are we beginning to think alike? And we're thinking not just with our heads now, we're thinking with our sense of smell, what we hear, what are the sounds, what does it feel like to enter this place? I was very interested to note that you came up out of the mud in this place. So do you get into this place through the muck? Beautiful comments on Cinderella as well. Janet went to Gozo to discover that there was a Cinderella story there and was very surprised by the complexity of the tale. So yeah. Oh yes, Sandra, sometimes I feel that I've been in this place before. It feels familiar. I'm writing it, but it's complicated and it's fictional. Yeah, absolutely. Alma came late and wants me to explain the red thread of story. So the story threading, it's likening story making to weaving, and it goes across ages into the future, past, in the present amongst us, And then it's the quality of storytelling. A thread can be thrown out, like tell me about a person, a character. Another thread can be thrown out, tell me about a place. Now, can I put this character into that place? So we're threading like that. It's red thread is a therapeutic term, but red threading is actually it's a phrase my grandmother used, threading, and she described a carpet and all the threads being pulled in to make, the weaving of the carpet, and that's somebody's life. And it looks all knotted and still beautiful and silken threads on one side. But when you go to the other side, the heavenly side, you see the picture, the big picture. And I just adopted it. And I run sessions in pubs, and at festivals where I'll do a red threading and I'll pull threads from the audience and I'll make the story that was never told. So that's one of the offerings that I make at festivals. And we've gotten some brilliant stories from that. And we're doing a bit of red threading here today, Alma. So I hope that answers it, Living water, Margarita Kennefic. I actually have a story about that, about living water. Absolutely, Oh, Marika says, yes, I could smell and hear it. It was very similar to my place. It was a visceral experience. Love it. David says, I saw the hollers of Appalachia where I grew up, which are filled with trees, flowers, scents, sounds, and the smoke smell of lonely cabins where people are starting their day. So you can see why David is a storyteller. Oh, lovely from Ray. I'm no longer in Ballydehab. I'm in the place of gathering of the stones. A story is birthing. Brilliant. Can't wait to hear it. I love Ray's stories, and I love the fact that they take a while to be born and are always worth listening to. So thank you very much for that. So now straight away, I'm going to jump into the next part, which is where we begin to weave two threads together. So we believe to weave Kate into Elvery. So I'm going to go back to my gallery and I'm going to look for somebody who hasn't already participated to help with the next part of the story. And I'm just noticing that we're almost coming up to the hour. Does it feel like an hour? It feels like minutes, doesn't it? When you begin to play with stories, it's absolutely amazing. So I'd love for somebody who maybe hasn't told a lot of stories to be involved in the next part, which is the plotting part of the storytelling. And I'll ask the wise questions so the story will help to make itself. So who would like to be involved? It can be anybody. Just put up your hand. Oh, very good, Marika. I'm just going to, Marika, just going to pin Marika there. Hi, Marika. Lovely to see you.
Hi, Maria. Lovely to see you too.
So let's just remind ourselves about Kate. So Kate is about 35 or 36 years of age. She's anxious and nervous today, and we're just about to find out why. She's reliable, but she's also adventurous and, isn't adverse to taking a risk if circumstances need it. And she's a very strong woman in the face of poverty. I've no desire to change that sentence because I think it's a beautiful way of painting that, She is slight, and her hair is its natural colour. So those are the bits that I've picked up so far. And then Elvery, in the bit that she mightn't enter it like this, but when we enter Elvery, we enter through the muck, and when our ears come free of the muck, we hear a gurgling sound. So there's a stream nearby. The temperature is just right. It's like a shaded space, and there's beautiful smells like brambles near the ground with that kind of tart smell, that tart damp smell. There's the sound of swishing, whoosh, and there's the sound of birds singing in this place called Elvery. And there might be things that you remember that I don't remember, as well, Marika. So we're kind of re-familiar now with Kate and with Elvery. And Kate lands in this place, and it's not a place that she's familiar with. So what the first question I'm going to ask you, Marika, is what is she doing here? Why is she here?
She needed to go and find a well because her one had gone dry at home, and she needed to get water.
Love it. So she went into this unfamiliar place, and she hears what we hear, the gurgling stream, and it makes her interested because she's looking for water. Okay. When she comes into this place, she comes across the reason why she's here. There's a reason she's been called here, and she becomes aware of it. It could be just a thought that comes into her head. It could be a notice left in a magical way. I don't know how it happened, but you tell me, Marika. How does she discover the reason why she's here? And what is that reason?
She finds that the mist clears a bit, and she realizes that she can actually see and hear. And a bird is there, a robin actually, and it's got tied around its leg. It has a little ribbon, and it's hopping in front of her, and it asks her to untie it. And she unties it, and there's a message from a very special old person that she hasn't heard of for ages, and she didn't believe that they were actually real until she found this.
What does the message say?
It says, Kate, follow the bird, follow this bird, and it's going to take you through, it's going to take you past all those tributaries of this gurgling brook that might lead you astray, and it will take you where you need to go to get the answer to the quest that is bigger than just looking for the water, which you know.
I love it. I'm just enjoying that for a second there now, Marika, before I ask you my next question. Marika is given a magical gift to help her in this quest. It can be something that's internal in her body. It can be something that she touches, but it gives her a power, and she has a way of turning it on and turning it off, because when you use it, it can be quite exhausting. So the first wise question, Marika, is what power is she going to have access to?
she's going to have a very, very special power that's going to be so needed in the future, because the earth is drying. She is going to be given the power of divining pure, good, wonderful, healing water that will nurture.
I love it. How does she turn on the divining power and how does she turn it off?
It's very important that she remembers the extra message that was on the ribbon that was left. And it says, in order to turn on your divining power, you must put your hands together in front of you, put them up and reach into the sky, bring them down, and the power will be opened. You mustn't forget to turn it off when you no longer need it. So you put your hands together and you put your hands downwards and reverse the movement. And then push the power back to source. And then bring your hand.
Oh my God, I love it. I love it. Thank you very much, Marika. Was that enjoyable?
Thank you.
It was so
I loved
enjoyable being on the side. Thank you very much. So I am going to release you back into the wild. And here we come again. Could you guys see that? Could you see it happening? Could you see Kate stepping up and the robin coming down and putting out its skinny little leg? And she's undoing the little ribbon and she's reading the note. Oh, oh yes, Ray, I love this too. Lovely to get your chats while this is going on. The chat is like, I'm not moving. So Mandy said to thank everybody for joining us today. Of course, there would be no story if we didn't have our story makers and our storytellers here. So so that's another way of using the thread. So the thread, with the threads that we're throwing out before we weave them together, is the character, and we've looked at it on a very light, high level way. The environment, the mission of the person. And now the next part of the story will be a distractor. Something's going to make her stop worrying about water. So I'm going to ask you to throw into the chat what might stop her from this beautiful mission. I mean, where you kind of like open up your divining powers, like, you know, what would distract you from the very important job of divining water when the land is so dry and when the world needs you so badly? Come on, what comes into the chat? Storm, yeah, I like it. What kind of storm? You have to, so Claire, I like a lightning storm. Very good. Sandra B, very good. Let's develop the storm. Oh, look at that, Alma. Absolutely. I love this. I love this. My mom used to sit us on a sofa and call it the story sofa. And she would make it like this. A monsoon with a frog in it. I love it. With thunder and a cooling wind. Yeah. So if there's going to be a storm, a monsoon with a frog and a cooling wind, but the land is dry, I think there can't be any rain, you know, just this magnificent light show. And you're waiting for the clap of thunder and the lightning to come seconds together for it to be a storm. So that might be the distractor. The frog speaks. Of course, the frog speaks. Lightning hits a tree that falls on her. Oh my God, absolutely. The water thief. Oh, Janet Crouch, tell me about the water thief. A very strong wind blowing everything away. Yeah. Yeah. How do you survive a storm with a very strong wind that's blowing everything away? Could the thunderbolt bring an entity? Yes, the frog maybe. Someone wants to destroy the cell. Yeah. Look at our imaginations working. Do you see our imaginations working? Who wants all the water, consuming it all and locking it up? Yes, it could be. The water wraps her up. Maybe that's how she gets out of it. She gets a bubble of water. That's the next bit. The water sprite encloses her in a protective bubble. I love it. Right, we're going to stop. We're going to stop there now for a minute. And from all that you've told me, I'm going to weave a storm. So she knows what, she's had a beautiful experience with the robin. Even the, kind of the action of opening up the divining slows her pace and slows her breathing, and it feels miraculous and beautiful in this shaded place with the sounds of nature, the swishing and all of that. And then she hears a rustle, and the rustle becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's like a storm, except it's not happening in the sky, it's coming from the ground, and she feels that there will be somebody in it. And through this visible but invisible wrinkle in space and time, she sees character. She sees a sprite that looks as if it's choking and might die. She sees a frog with its hands out like this and a shocked expression on its face, almost as if it's calling for help. And then she gets pulled out from her place, and she feels this wind whipping on her skin, and she feels she might die, and she needs someone, something, some force of nature to help but not solve the problem. They're going to help her to come back to a grounded position where she can divine for water, but they're not going to solve it. That's not their job. That's her job in this story. So who or what helps her? And we'd already had maybe I love it, Nuala. I love the crows. I have to tell you, But I think the crows and the robin, maybe the crows can help. What quality has a crow got that a little robin does not have? I can tell you what they are in Celtic myth, but what is it that these crows want to tell us? Oh, yes, the water wraps her up. I love that. Sorry, no, the messages are going like this. So I'm dipping into them. It's like magic gems. She has the determination, and so the crows have determination and fearlessness. Two difficult words to say, Sandra B, but I love it. Yeah, resilience. Yeah, absolutely. And doesn't our lovely Kate have resilience too? They're messengers, they sure are, but from who? Are they from the good side or the stormy side? Oh, Nuala, the water will not flow again until her brothers return from the tribal wars. Alma wants a copy of the chat. So do I. So do I want a copy of this chat. It's amazing. Okay, very good. So I'm beginning to, pulling out of the red threads that you've put into the chat, I'm beginning to see crows that bring a solution, and they come with messages, and they come with a film of water, a bubble of water that she steps into, and it's just like a bubble. It's like a film of water, and it looks very delicate, but the wind can't blow it down. It can blow it to one side or the other side, but it can't blow through it. It can't pop it. It can't blow it down. The crows are her brothers. Oh, my mind is melting. Whoa, 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 whoa. The crows are her brothers. Yes, they are. Of course they are. Crows are her brothers. Brother crow. They have to be good, so. And she goes back on her mission. She goes back on her mission in this bubble, and she's watching the chaos all around, but she's enclosed in this bubble, which means that she's not being blown anymore. And she gets back to trying to feed the land with water. And our time is almost running out. So I better come quickly to the end. Is this the end of a chapter? Which means we all have to come back here next week and do it again? Or is it the end? Dun, 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 dun. Whatever way it is, it's the hardest part of a story because you can't say the end or you can't say end of chapter 1. And without saying those words, you have to wrap it up in a big pink bow that we know this is a full story or a full chapter. Who's going to help me? I'm going to go back into gallery view for this one. And I'm going to ask for a volunteer to help me put an ending to this beautiful story. Kate Ishka, Kate of the Waters. Who would like to help me end this? Hands up. Hands up, baby, hands up. Don't worry, I'll ask you the wise questions. Thank you, Nuala. Nuala. Adpin. There we go. Lovely to see you. I can't hear you, Nuala. Can you just say hello?
Hello, can we hear me now?
I can hear you now. Beautiful, beautiful. Fantastic. So here's the wise questions, Nuala. The ending has to be a proper ending. We have to know that it's tied up in a big pink bow, and it has to have a solution of some sort, either the big solution and we're at the end of the story and this is a fully packaged story, or the ending of this scene and we know the next scene is going to be in a completely different place or time or wherever. So have you
So,
an ending in your mind?
I have a wee notion.
Go on, give us the notion.
So this bubble has the power to transport her above where her brothers are in tribal wars, with the ability to drop directions which were on the robin's leg down to the boys and send her back home.
Okay. Now
Then they
I'm
followed the
going to stop you,
directions.
and I'm going to say I love that. I love it and I can see it in my mind's eye, but we can't carry on in making the story, so we can't make the story again. So it has to be an actual ending. I do like the idea of her floating up in her bubble, I have to say, towards her brother crows. And then I need, at this stage, the land is dry and needs water. How are we going to fix that? So focus our mind on the solution.
She also, while in this bubble, can land on the top of the mountain where there is a hidden stream. She unplugs the stream and water flows slowly and gently at first until the brothers return.
Dear God, I love it. That's our solution. Yay! Mwah! Right. Thank you, Nuala. Nuala, where are you coming in from?
Enniskillen from Anna.
Enniskillen! Oh my God, my name is Gillen. So Enniskillen. I love it. Thank you for coming with the solution. So now I'm just going to unpin you. There we go. And we're going to come back. So are you ready for our story? We have very little time. So are you ready for our story? Would anybody else like to tell it, or will I tell it? Me. Okay. Right. Here we go. Once upon a time, in a world that wasn't this world, but was very like this world, there was an ordinary woman. Everybody who met Kate talked about how lovely she was and how ordinary and how down to earth she was. She'd survived poverty with grace and dignity. She was very reliable, and her neighbours often came to her with their troubles and in times of their grief. This day she was nervous. She was very anxious and she did not know the reason why. She woke up and she just felt this heaviness on her. It felt like the whole world was feeling anxious and nervous. And when she spoke to other people, they too said they could feel that something was coming. She spent the morning feeling like this, and then she went out into her back garden to pull some water from the well, for it was far beyond her means to have a sink in her kitchen. And when she went to the well, she found that it was dry. Not just dry, but dusty. She found that even the earth around the top of the well was dry. And she thought, is this the reason that I'm feeling anxious? Is this the reason that I'm feeling nervous? But she was a woman who always looked for solutions. So she went to the old books and she spoke to the Shandini, the old people of the area, and they told her about this place that wasn't far, where the trees were still green, where the grass was green as you went into it, and where it was dark and mysterious inside, but they felt there might be water there. The people of the town felt too nervous and too anxious to go into this place, and even though she felt nervous and anxious too, she decided that she'd make her way in. And so she did. She went in through the beautiful green grass, through the trees, and then she came to a place of wet muck. And at first she clicked her tongue at how it was destroying her shoes. But then she took her shoes off and put them up into the branches and noticed how lovely it was to squelch your toes in this wet muck. And the temperature was so nice, it was like putting your feet in warm chocolate. So much so that she had to stop herself from tasting the muck. And then she heard the birds singing and the swishing through the undergrowth, and nothing else. No cars, no radios, no people arguing. And she took it in just for a minute or two. Or was it 5 minutes? Or maybe 10 minutes? And then she saw him, the little robin, dancing from branch to branch to branch, coming closer to her. And when he was near enough to her and her feet still in the warm muck, he landed on her finger. And she thought, how bold are you? And then she saw there was a note on his leg. And she undid the little ribbon and she read the note, and the note said, it's your job to bring the water back to the earth. But there's a way you can do it. Kiss this page and we will put that way into your mind's eye. So she kissed the page, and in her mind's eye there was an explosion of light, and writing began to make itself on the wall of her mind. And it said, you have the power of divination. You can find where the water hides in the earth, waiting to be let free. And it showed her that if she put her arms up with her eyes to heaven and pulled the power down, that she would then know where the water was. So she tried it. And even though it took a lot of energy, it also gave her such a lift in her heart space. And she began to walk through the forest, and she began to find little springs here and little springs there. And she was just about to leave and find out where the springs were near her village when a wind started to blow. Not just any wind. It wasn't coming from the sky or even from the horizon, but it felt as if this wind was blowing up through the ground. It felt that it would strip herself of her skin. All the leaves were already gone from the trees, and the robin was nowhere to be seen. she started to cry and to ask for help. You must ask for help. Tarkuim, Modini, Tarkuim, come to me, my people, come to me. And overhead she saw 2 dark shadows flying. Crows, were they to be trusted? Were they to be trusted? And then she heard, Ka, Ka, Tomit, Dograharika, we are your brothers. For she knew how to listen to nature. Help me, she thought in her mind. And when she did, they flew all around her, all around, flying faster and faster. And through this microcosm skin that she was forming all around her, she could see sprites of old and frogs looking as if they needed help. And at the end, there was a bubble formed around her, and the wind blew, trying to blow it down. And even though it bent and shook in the wind, it kept a space around her. She brought herself into her centre, and she began to concentrate. And as she did, the bubble began to lift. It rose high, high into the sky, taking her away from the village to a mountain in the distance. And on top of the mountain, she divined there was water blocked by a big boulder. She went over and held it with her hands and asked it to move with as much politeness as she could. And the rock moved, and the water began to bubble up. Bloop, 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 noises like that. And it came like a thin stream out of the mountain, and then it began to gather speed and mass. And by the time it was at the end of the mountain, it was a roaring river, and it made its way in to the middle of the forest and out the other side to the edge of her village. Our story! Yay! So finally, I'm going to go into gallery view because we have very little minutes left now. So here we are in gallery view, and just for YouTube and for the other people that might come to the other You Grow Through What You Go Through sessions that are always being run, can you let us know what you thought of today? So I'm going to ask you to take off your microphones, and then I'm going to ask you to put up your hand and let us know what you felt like being part of this lovely session today. So hands up. Oh, is that so Emer Burke, we're going to bring you in first.
Absolutely wonderful session, Maria. Of course, as expected, as always. You've done things like this before, and it never ceases to amaze me, the magic that can be woven with a group of people. And I've done it not on Zoom, but in real. And it's just lovely to see this process working with Zoom and everybody's contributions. It's just magic. Absolutely. Just loved it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Emer. Lovely. You know, just letting you know that on the 4th of November, I'll be doing it again in County Mayo, and it's a community group that are bringing it together. So if you're interested, DM me, and I will send a note off to the organizer. So Mayo is a magical place. So thank you for that, Emer. And Sandra, were you coming in there?
Yes, I just want to say it's my first experience of doing anything like this. I was really curious. So I've watched you over the years, and I've watched you grow, and I love your stuff. It was magical. It was really magical. I really loved it. Absolutely loved it. Thank you.
You know, Sandra, I'd love to see this in the bardic poem form, you know, this beautiful story of the water hunter, you know, Kate Ishka, Coit Ishka. So I'm planting that as a seed, and maybe we'll hear the poem sometime.
Send me the chat.
I will send you the chat. Thank you, Sandra. Yeah.
Thank you.
So who else would like to come in? Hiya, Ray.
Hiya, Maria. Oh, Maria, thank you. for taking me into the magical mist. It was a beautiful way to spend a Monday morning. I'd love to do this on Monday mornings because it would set me up for the rest of the week. Thank you.
Thank you. And you know, Ray, I love it so much myself because you never know what's going to come, you know. And I think it's not a mechanism that makes this magic. It's the people, it's the story circles that form around this mechanism that make it magic. So thank you.
You make me always feel like I want to start storytelling again. Oh.
Come back.
Oh.
Oh, lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Janet.
I found it really interesting. Magical, I don't know. Yeah, parts of it. But what I found was I was fighting all the time because I didn't want your story to go in that direction. I wanted to change it. I wanted it to go in my direction. But I couldn't leave your story, and my story had to be put to one side, and then I thought I'll snatch it back, but then I have to put it aside. So in a way, I got two stories out of this.
Yes, brilliant.
So it was really interesting, really interesting. Of course, there was magic, but there was real work in there too. Yeah, it was really good. Really good.
I love what you said, Janet. And I remember when I was first leaving the corporate environment and I found it very hard to get into magical thinking, you know. So I was very much in the intellect, which is like behind my eyes here in myself. I don't know where anybody else's intellect lives. So I started looking at things like physicality and how moving could change that, and language and magical language and emotional parts and social and you know, spiritual, the spirituality of story, which you would never get with just the intellectual side. So I hear what you're saying about the tug of war. And then when I first started doing this, you know, I'd be asking somebody questions, but in my own mind's eye, I'd have already an idea and I built that into another story. And then I let go of that because I was thinking, that can be felt. You mightn't see that, but it can be felt, you know. So I found a way of leaving things away, go away from me. And they say in Corkland, go away from me. And I used to think that in my head, I'd go away from me for now, you know. But sometimes they come back afterwards and another story would be born. So the thing that I love about a weaving is that, you know, another pocket can be added to the garment afterwards. So thank you for that, Janet. That was lovely. So, and what about you, David? Are you
Hey. Thank you so much, Maria. It was incredible. I'm taking away a lot of what, you know, from this session and setting it into the culture where I live and bringing into fruition, working with the Hispanic students and bringing in the Mesoamerican. And you know, like you saw my comment about the god Oteotl, who is the Aztec rain god. And also it starts a whole process of how can we take Kate through this? Chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. Of course, it would probably be Maria y Consuelo. But, you know, how do we do this? And bringing in the students and bringing in their native culture.
Absolutely. And the wise question, I think it's something that's used in a lot of indigenous cultures, and we've forgotten how to use it, you know. So like my granny would always say to me, never tell somebody how they feel, ask them, you know. And even something as small as that, you know, kind of is powerful. You know, I found it very powerful in the corporate world as well, because it's a very parental structure. So like when I was a manager, people would come and they'd go, how will I do this? And I was like, you're driving me mad because I have to do my own work. And my boss said, ask them, how would they handle it? And if you agree with it, say you knew the answer all the time. And that worked to charm, you know. So so very wise things, David. Thank you, you know. So anybody else like to come in? Marguerite?
I just wanted to say thank you for such lovely medicine this morning.
Oh.
I really needed it. Yeah, it
Oh,
was wonderful.
good.
Yeah. And I love the idea of training ourselves into magical thinking. Because I think you're right, our intellect keeps pulling away and saying that won't work in real life, though. We have to do it differently.
Yeah.
And there's real power in really disciplining ourselves to listen to our magical thinking.
Absolutely. Like one of the things I say when I go to corporate, when I'm in corporate environments, is we have to learn here how to color inside the lines, yet think outside the box. So we have to hold the rules, but we have to be creative thinkers, you know. And a way of doing that is by the muscle that's already well developed, which is intellect, by leaving that out for this certain amount of time. And let's look at our other tools, you know, so to give a rise up to the tools that we don't use often enough.
Yeah.
So thanks, Marguerite. Yeah. So I think we're almost there. In fact, we're 3 minutes over time. Thank you everybody for coming. This will go up on the You Go Through What You Go Through website eventually, but we'll send you a link to the YouTube so you can refresh yourselves, and we will definitely save the chat. How do I do it now? Save the chat. Save chat.
It automatically saves, Maria, when it's
Brilliant. That's great.
when I stop recording, it will start processing and it will automatically save it.
That's brilliant. So Mandy, will you take care of keeping this lovely group
Of course.
and sending them the chat?
I've made a list.
Brilliant. So I'm going to give final word to our wonderful organizer. So it's Mandy's dream is this you grow through what you go through platform. And I have come to a number of the sessions. One of the ones I really loved was the Catherine Souther Caddick one on the on art and what that meant to me during COVID lockdown, because she asked us to close our eyes and then we traced our faces with one hand and we drew with the other, and I realized I didn't have to draw perfectly. And I'm hooked now. I'm hooked on art now since then. I love it. So so I'm going to give last word. I'm going to put us back into the speaker view, and I'm going to give last word to Mandy.
I'm just going to say thank you so much for everyone for turning up today. And isn't Maria fabulous? I just love her. I just love her. And I hope that you will take a look on our website or on a Facebook page and look at the other videos that we've got, the other sessions that we've held, because they're really interesting. And sometimes, like Maria says, it's good to look at things in a different way and a different perspective. And we've got some more really interesting ones coming up. We've got someone who works with artificial intelligence and what she does to create her work. Then we've got a political cartoonist who's her work's really interesting. And then next month we've got, I think, music, next month. So that might be maybe involved a bit of songwriting. I'm not 100% what he's going to do. I know he said it might involve a Rubik's Cube, so I'm not sure what that's going to involve. But yeah, thank you so much for coming today and spending time with us. And of course, we have to say thank you to the Arts Council for funding this project for us, to enable us for all to meet from all over the world, like David and Jodie, when I think she may have gone now, but yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Be well, be fabulous.
Love it. Thanks, David.